It's when you skim that I think that you miss some of the stuff in this. We might pick up on a few little bits that maybe not everybody has seen, because they do what I'm prone to do, which is just skim their eyes across things.
Hello and welcome to Sacred Book, in which two old Navy fellas talk both the Tanakh and eventually the New Testament. They probably wrote it quicker than we're talking about it. And the Christian perspective happens to be
Steve.
And the atheist who believes in God's perspective happens to be myself, Mark. Welcome. There are shorts with this. Please take a look and then come back. Thank you. Genesis 10. We've had descendants being mentioned before, but nothing like this. A lot of begatting.
There's a lot of begetting. One of the things I've always thought with Genesis 10 is it's actually in the wrong place. Genesis 10 should be read after Genesis 11.
Right.
Obviously isn't in the wrong place. If you read chapter 11 before 10, it just seems to flow better because it talks about the Tower of Babel. Then it goes back into the genealogy of Noah, which I think just makes a bit more sense.
It is unusual. You get this very long list of 70 names. It's also unusual in the whole of ancient history. Very rarely will you get this length of setting out names. There's a mixture of people and names of tribes, names of nations. The floods ended. Mankind has been told to go out and repopulate, and there's plenty of that. There's a telescoping of time in Genesis 10, quite a dramatic telescoping. It's like the concertina has been put out to full extent and now it's been squeezed into a little amount to give a lot of history. God is the God of all of these nations because they've all stemmed from one of three people.
That's right. The way that it's set out is actually setting the tone for all that is now to come. We have this order having now been brought out of chaos. There's some numbers jumped out at me for various reasons. I'd ask the questions why, without wanting to veer off into the esoteric and mystical realm of Kabbalah or anything like that. There is some interesting order that I see in this, which might be of significance, might not, might just be purely speculative, might be me reading backwards and getting everything totally wrong, who knows. This whole table of nations that we've got is bringing that very clear purpose and a very clear plan that God will be engaged with all of his peoples going forward. Even down to the names of some of the people that have the name of God in their name. There will be significance that comes out of it. Every single piece of writing in Scripture is there for a reason, is there for a purpose. We shouldn't just gloss over these things. Every year when I read it at the beginning of the year and it comes up on my daily reading, I think, oh, here we go. So-and-so, these are the generations of Noah, Shem, Ham, Japheth, skip that bit type of thing, and you skim. It's when you skim that I think that you miss some of the stuff in this. We might pick up on a few little bits that maybe not everybody has seen, because they do what I'm prone to do, which is just skim their eyes across things.
I did the same in the times I've read the Bible previously. You dutifully go through it because you're reading it. It tires the eyes as well as the brain as you're going through it, but I think that's because prior to understanding fully better. Is that right? Fully better? That's bad language. Prior to understanding Pardes, not just literal. Some of these names jump out at you. Magog or Magog. Tarshish. Kittim. The Isles of the Gentiles. Sheba. Nimrod. Babel or Babel, depending on how you want to pronounce it. Nineveh. If you're not religious, but you are interested in ancient history, those names are well known to you. They're places. Whoever wrote this down, and we assume it's Moses, is saying there's this vast period in time which will have major effects to do with the rest of the story. Given the mise-en-scene of what's about to happen. And it's of large scope. This is not small, we're talking massive amounts of the known world. Noah means rest. If you looked at the actual meanings of Shem, Ham and Japheth, the sons of rest, its fame, hot and expand. Names mean something. Japheth means expansion. Gomer, completion. Write down the English names and it says this. Expansion, completion, from the heights, a measure, a garment, Greece, the earth, drawn by force, desirable. Something there that's saying something. I kind of get it, but then again, I don't. Don't think in the English it gives us an idea what's trying to be intimated here, but there's more than just names.
Every name has a significance and has a meaning. Therefore, it is prudent for us to try and understand what that significance and meaning was.
It's going to be quite a few episodes here then, Steve.
Might be. We might be able to speed it up, mate. Verse 1. Normally, when you get a genealogical line, the first principle that you work off is that the eldest is written first. That's not the case here. First named is Shem, who's the younger. We go from the younger through to the oldest, Shem, Ham and Japheth, Japheth being the oldest. It's a reverse order of what you'd normally expect to see. Shem is placed there right up front because this is like a magnet drawing our attention. When we read that, we should go, oh, hang about a minute. Why is Japheth not mentioned first? Why is he mentioned last? And why is Shem mentioned first? The original hearers, who would have known how the cultural genealogy flowed, the firstborn is the one who has the double portion. The firstborn is the one who has the double blessing. The firstborn is always the one that's listed first. Well, he's not. So that should jar the listener to be awake to something about Shem. We then need to be thinking, I've been forewarned that Shem is of importance. Why is he of importance?
This is a thing that's going to go throughout the whole Bible, isn't it? The lowest often becomes the greatest.
The first becomes last. It's a small indication, a little signpost, a little remez, a little hint of something worth us considering as we track through. That's the first little sort of flag that I see as we open the account.
And Shem, Samite, the forerunner of Israel.
Absolutely. So it is giving us a flag right up front that there is going to be something very important that we should be focusing on when it comes to Shem and the placement of Shem and all that then flows from Shem. Jumping right into a Christological worldview, the thing that flows from Shem through Shemites, through Israel, through the holy people, through Jerusalem, through the Jews is the person of Jesus.
Yeah.
Verse 2 starts off the sons of Japheth. It does a flip.
Switches it again, doesn't it?
We're told in verse 1, focus on Shem, and we get to verse 2 and it suddenly focuses on Japheth, which would not follow the narrative flow. So we've got a glitch in the system. Japheth, the eldest. And as you have gone through already, 7 sons of Japheth.
Yeah.
When you look at the 7 sons, it seems to me, if I've got this right, that as the story unfolds, out of the 7 sons, the text only decides to focus on 2 of them.
Yeah.
It focuses on Gomer, the first named, and it focuses on Javan, the fourth named. It doesn't focus on all the rest. Okay, the first and the fourth. Why? This is where I go off into the speculative world a little bit here.
Yeah.
If you look at gematria and the numbers that sit around the Hebrew language, the first expresses the notion of the chief or the first in hierarchy, authority, or in power.
Yeah.
Setting something up there. Fourth comes from the Hebrew word dalet, meaning door, which signifies completion, wholeness, or fullness. Hades is 4, so the whole of Torah is understood on 4 levels. And then it identifies all of those sons linked to the Cimmerians, who are an ancient Iranic nomadic folk. When you start to go into the name, and then you start to understand what the name means, and then you research what the name then led into, you start to see the tapestry of that ancient Near East being built and expanding outwards from these points. In rabbinical literature, Gomer is Africa, an ally of Gog, who was within the land of Magog. You can read about that in Ezekiel 38:6. Then you go on to Magog, people that are located east of the Cimmerians, west of the Medes.
Yeah.
Josephus, in his writings, calls them the Scythians.
Ah, Black Sea. Okay.
There's obviously a lot of stuff that Josephus has said that there's debate around, but he was pretty reasonable. You come down to Madai, meaning the middle land, and that represents the Medes and the Persians. So you're starting to build all of this beautiful area out there. Javan, which is Ionia, Greece, the father of the Hellenist race of people who lived in Western Asian Minor. And then you get to Tubal, who is believed to have been one of these militaristic tribes that lived up in the north of the Black Sea. And his name means they shall be brought. And Meshech means drawing out, which is his brother, the next one down. These are people who are called the Musku. They're actually detailed in Assyrian records. And then Tiras is they shall be brought, drawing out desire. And Tiras was the ancestor of the Thracians, Pelasgian pirates of the Aegean. They were like the Jack Sparrows of the ancient Near East. Aha! Well, I think we've arrived at a very special place, both spiritually, ecumenically, and grammatically. They were our first pirates. I love it.
It's superb, isn't it, when you think about it? If you just read the names, you don't think of any of that. But what this is, it's like a map.
Exactly. If you were to put a map in front of you and you were to put like risk type characters or figures on it, you would start to see what I picture in my head, because I sort of often think in pictures, is Second World War, command centre, big map on the table with the ladies pushing the counters and the aircraft across with the Germans coming this way. Start to see this wonderful image appear off the page to you.
Perfect. And also the game diplomacy, because some of these will be allies, some of these will be friends.
Brothers, cousins, family members, the alliances then form, and alliances break, depending on how much you hate your family.
So from the get-go, what is being laid out is jigsaw. These are this people, and they're here, and they're there, in ancient times. From the perspective of those hearing this, they're being told this is divinely orchestrated.
There is a very, very, very clear message being driven through it when you see the way it's written, i.e. who is included, who is excluded, who is jumped over and missed out. We see this when we get to verse 3, because we now go straight into Gomer and we start to talk about his 3 sons. And then in verse 4, we go straight into the sons of Javan, and we've missed out those other 5 sons of Japheth. We don't talk about them.
In verse 5, by these were the isles of the Gentiles divided in their lands. The ancient Greeks would find colonies. There's various places in which Tarshish could have been. It could be Tartessus in Spain, it could be southern France. In Psalm 72, verse 10, the kings of Tarshish of the isles shall bring presents. Javan founded Elisha and Tarshish and Kittim. They leapfrogged to new places on the map. The people listening to this knew of these places, probably because of trade.
You're absolutely right that verse 5 actually nails for us why they're focusing on Gomer and why they're focusing on Javan, because these are the people that spread out and did exactly that. They went out to the islands, they followed whatever trade routes that they were that went out. If you look at just the sons of Gomer, you've got Ashkenaz, Riphath and Togarmah. Ashkenaz is possibly a northern branch of the Indo-Germanic tribes. And the Ashkenazi Jews...
Oh, of course, yes.
You have the Sephardi and you have the Ashkenazi, which, again, you push out into the Indo-Germanic region back in that time. That's what you're going to get. And they were mentioned in the Targum, the Talmud, and the Midrash as being part of that area of Asia, i.e. the Roman province of Asia, Lydia, Phrygia, and Caria. Ashkenaz means a man as sprinkled or fire as scattered. And I think of the Ashkenazi lineage as it's been scattered across the diaspora. That, to me, it's almost like a foretelling of what would happen with the Jewish people and the Ashkenazi Jews.
Well, a lot of later rabbinic thought comes from the Ashkenazi and the Sephardim.
The other 2 sons of Gomer, Riphath means spoken. Riphath lived north of the road from Haran to Carchemish. Togarmah means thou wilt break her. Togarmah, possibly in eastern Turkey. We skip out son 2 and 3 and we come straight to Javan, or Javan, or however it's pronounced. We focus on 4 of his sons. 4th son focuses on 4 sons. 4 and 4. There's something there. So Elisha is God of the coming one. That's what it means. And they populate the Cyprus area. Tarshish has always been really interesting because there is a reference that Tarshish was distinctive for its tin.
Oh, the Tin Isles. Oh, you're talking about southwest Britain?
Yes.
Right, okay.
Some have identified it as Sardinia or even Spain. It could well have pushed into southwest Britain as part of the British Isles.
Yeah.
That wouldn't surprise me either.
It wouldn't surprise me for one specific reason, and it's something in history has always really bugged me. There's this misconception that people in the past never travelled. That they were isolated and they didn't know who was beyond the next but one village. That's nonsense. The ancients traded just as much as we do. There was a massive sea that you could put boats to. Boats originally struggled in the Atlantic, but that's not to say that they could not go hugging the coast up Portugal and into the Bay of Biscay and up to Britain. Or certainly overland from southern France and then across to the Tin Isles. People wanted certain products long distances from where they were. People travelled, they took ideas with them, they took knowledge. That's why language spread. If the Hellenic language was beyond Greece, it's because they settled beyond Greece. The fact that it's been mentioned here is quite profound, that they knew this. And they knew who these people were and where they were.
I'm looking across to the big map that I've got on my wall here. If you were to look at that and you were to look at the distances of blue, i.e. the oceans, between land masses, and you were to focus in on that Middle East area and pushing out towards the west, towards Britain, there is so much that you can coast hug to try and loop yourself round. If you were to get across the English Channel into France, for example, you're on a massive landmass from which you can get all the way down to Indonesia if you pushed all the way through. And the same as if you managed to come down to the southern tips of Spain, you could hop across to Morocco.
Yes. And if you look at Norway, they managed to get to northern France, hence the Norsemen. They got all the way down to Sicily because they had a kingdom there, and they went through the Russian rivers all the way down to the Black Sea.
None of this is beyond the realm of possibility, far from it. And it gives us an indicator of how things spread out.
As an atheist, it concerns me that militant atheists would say, don't read anything in the Bible, it's nonsense. Well, this is probably one of the few instances in which we get a laying out of the ancient people from the ancient people's perspective. That should be treasured, that should be cherished, not poo-pooed. And I think it's because they'll just read it as names.
When you see all of these genealogies, spend a bit of time in them. It is important for scene setting. It's going to help us understand things. Scripture is not there to tell you everything. It is there to tell you sufficient that you need to know in order to understand. There is mystery within Scripture. There are some steps which you cannot see, for good reason. N.T. Wright describes the Bible as, we have got the Bible that we are meant to have. With its omissions, with its quirky potential contradictions, with all of the nuances that are involved in it through the various hand of the writers that put it together. But we have the book we're meant to have because it's sufficient.
Verse 5. The word Gentile comes from Latin, gens, which is family, race. These were the Isles of the Gentiles. What that means, it's non-Jews. I'm interested as to why that word was used by the King James Bible. I don't know what the original Hebrew is and how it reflects what is being represented here.
The Hebrew would be goye, the goyim, which is how every group of people other than the Jewish people were clustered, the non-Hebraic people.
So why are they saying that's where the non-Hebraic people were in the Isles, but they're not saying it elsewhere, are they?
Look at the line of Japheth. Japheth is not the line that the story of Scripture is going to focus upon. The story of Scripture focuses on the Jews, because it's a Jewish book. While the story of Scripture is of great value and of great benefit to the Goyim, the nations, the Gentiles, we're not the centre of it. The Jews are the centre of it. The Hebraic people are the centre of it. It's one of these little signs for us that these people, while they may be noteworthy, they're not where our centre is. Therefore, go back to the beginning, the sons of Noah, Shem. This is where our focal point must be.
Sure. But we're still saying that regardless of the fact that it's non-Hebraic, non-Jews, the God of them is still God.
God is God. It's a universal God, but not everybody moves into covenant with that God, according to Scripture.
Okay, good point. Okay, fair enough.
So that would give us the eldest son's sons and family lineage. Because then we jump onto Ham in verse 6. So we leave the Gentiles being divided off and going off to their lands, everyone after his own tongue and his family and to their nations.
Or as you said, the dirty, rotten Gentiles.
That's me and you, that is, mate.
That's right, absolutely. It's amazing, isn't it? You would assume that you could just do one episode of Genesis 10. Think again.
You can talk.
Yes, you can. We stopped doing it.
Take care, mate.